Welcome to Capacity Building for Individual Activists. So in this session today, we are going to have Elly and Wanyi. We're going to start with Elly and going to introduce her. She's going to speak, and then Wanyi, and then after that, you have Q&A. Please do submit through the VOVA app, as you know, and you've been doing for the whole conference. But also, if you have any questions, we can also just pass around the mic. So yeah, let's start with Elly. So Elly is the co-founder and executive director of Animal Alliance Asia. Born and raised in Japan, Elly is dedicated to building a more inclusive and effective animal justice movement across Asia. She was one of the first Japanese language educational context providers for animal advocates in Japan. She worked in media for over 10 years, such as BBC, prior to founding Animal Alliance Asia. So her passion is to support talented and passionate animal advocates across Asia. So please, big round of applause.
Thank you everyone for coming. Okay, so, and thank you Laura for the introduction. So we're Animal Alliance Asia, and today I'm going to talk about the importance of building capacity of individual activists and advocates, which I think most of you are in this room. So let's start with what we do. So at Animal Alliance Asia, we founded AAA back in the end of 2019, so it's like our fourth year. And so far, we have trained over 20,000 advocates already across Asia from 50 plus countries. We have held 177 events, and we have collected data from over 7,000 individuals from across Asia, advocates. And we have actually just launched our re-granting program, and we just granted 6 amazing grantees across Asia as well. So let's scan the room a little bit. Who in the room identifies as a grassroots activist? Okay. Oh, more than I thought, okay. Who actually already works for an existing organization in the movement? Okay. Oh, that's a lot of you. Okay. Who consider themselves as the leader of an organization or a group or initiative? Any leaders in the room? Okay, a few. That's great. Thank you so much. So today we're going to talk about individual activist and advocate training and capacity building, but I'm going to try and illustrate why that's important even when we talk about organizational development and movement development, because it's all connected. So at AAA, our mission is to make impactful changes for farmed animals by building capacity of animal advocates in Asia. And the next bit is really important to us, culturally specific solutions across Asia. So over the last few years, we have collected information, data, we have done research, which you can see on our website, throughout Asia, through I think 10 countries, 11 countries, to understand what are their needs? What gaps are there in the movement? How can we support local advocates and activists like you to become even more effective in our movement? How can we support you to contribute your existing skills for the animals? So these are the key areas of gaps that we have identified in our movement. Obviously, lack of advocacy training spaces, which we are creating and contributing to. Lack of numbers of locally led organizations that actually only focus on farmed animal advocacy. And lack of career path, as you probably all know, there's lack of career path. Even if you want to do something in the movement, it's really hard to find a job that's sustainable. And lack of access to international funding. As we all know in this room, it's really hard to get funding. So these problems that we have identified are very multi-layered. So let's break it down. So here's a movement breakthrough that we teach part of our fellowship. So usually a lot of us, I guess, in this room, we start with individual actions. We want to do something for the animals. How can we use our time, resources to do something for the animals? So maybe some of us start our actions. Some of us do online advocacy, maybe do Facebook posts, Instagram posts. But then at some point, a lot of us realized, okay, this is not enough. We need to do something bigger for systemic change. At that point, we have this breakthrough to think about, okay, maybe we need to create an organization, or maybe we need to work for an existing organization. A lot of us have done it, as we established in this room. A lot of you work for an organization. I founded AAA as well. But through that work, we then realized, okay, organizational level work is also not enough to make an institutional systemic change for animals. And that's when we make this breakthrough to then think about a bigger picture of the whole movement. Because organizational level contribution is obviously not enough. We need to start collaborating with each other. We need different approaches, different interventions to make a bigger change for the animals. So if we go back one slide back. So if we go back to this, now we can see, obviously, So many of us as individuals feel that obviously our individual actions, individual advocacy might not be big enough for a big change. That is why we need training for individual activists and advocates so that we can support you with strategy planning. How can you make your idea more sustainable, more effective? We provide that training for individual activists. In an organizational level, we need to have more locally led organizations focusing on farm animal advocacy in each of your country. So we also try to incubate new initiatives, new projects, because all of you have amazing ideas. You just need a little bit of support financially and maybe strategy planning to incubate your ideas. We're there for that too. Career path-wise, that's an organizational level issue. We need more organizations with more healthy HR practices and sustainable jobs that need to be created. And lastly, funding as well. Lack of funding is another movement-wide issue that we are trying to tackle through our work as well. We provide incubation programs, re-granting programs to help you financially to make your ideas come true. So as I said, this is where we come in. These are the problems and gaps that we have identified in the last 3 years. We now have enough expertise, enough resources to support you through all of these stages through our fellowship. So, sorry, it's a bit small, but this is the design of our fellowship going forward. So through our fellowship, we will be training individual activists like yourselves, but it will have an incubation element attached to our fellowship. So anyone with ideas, they can group up, and we will help you with strategizing your idea, and then it will be funded to become an actual initiative or project by the end of the fellowship. And the impact that we would like to create is to see more local leadership. So you all, in your own country, local, local initiatives led by local leadership, using culturally appropriate, culturally relevant approaches and interventions. And we at AAA already have some really good idea of what's culturally appropriate in each of your country, across 10 countries. And we would be incubating either diet change initiatives or policy change initiatives through our fellowship next year. So I'll go back a little bit. Oh no, here. So these are the 7 countries that we will be focusing on going forward. So for Vietnam, Pakistan, and Indonesia, we will have fellowship to create more diet change champions. And then for Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Nepal, we will continue our effort in developing skills of vegan advocates and activists and incubate new ideas. So we're hoping to incubate at least 8 new projects by the end of the year, either in diet change or policy change. And this decision is all based around the research and expertise that we have built over the last 3 years. For example, in Nepal, it's much easier to create policy change, especially at the local government level, compared to some other countries where it's almost impossible to make a policy change in a short term. So for Nepal, we will be, for example, focusing on policy change. For Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, we will be focusing on diet change, but it will be very culturally specific. Thanks to all the amazing country coordinators we have here in the room, we have been able to build local network and local expertise on what works and what doesn't. For example, in the Philippines, there's a huge need for us to focus on food accessibility issues, for example. That's really intersecting with veganism and animal rights issues. So many people don't have access to their own kitchen facilities. They don't have opportunities to cook for themselves. So we need to really work in different ways than we do for Japan and Taiwan, for example. Let's go back a bit. So at AAA, we are aware that everybody in this room, everybody in our vegan and advocate community has a space, unique space and place in our movement. You don't have to embody that, stereotypical leadership role that we kind of envision when we think about leaders. And we teach these 4 political personalities roles in our fellowship as well. The scholars some of the scholars who study social justice movements have discovered or established that these different 4 personalities are needed in our movement to be successful in other social justice movements in history. So some of you might be more rebellious than others. Some of you might be more like a good ordinary citizen who embody that values, shared values in communities. Some of you might be working from within the system, within the politics system, within the legal system. So we really need different types of people, different types of advocates in our movement. So our fellowship is really holistic in a way that we don't just encourage one type of leadership, stereotypical leadership, but we really want to build on your own personality, own skill set and expertise, and become the more effective advocate for animals. So these are some amazing people that have attended our events in the past from different countries. We will continue our effort in these 7 countries, so please, if you're from any of these 7 countries, our fellowship will open up for applications again next year, so please come and apply and learn with us, and let's make a movement much bigger. And to start, we actually have a conference coming up. It's online, so anyone can come online. It's next month in November. It's for 2 days, and it's going to be really informal, very inclusive, open space for anyone to come and celebrate some of the amazing grantees that we have and projects that have been happening across Asia. So it's a place to celebrate each other and learn from each other. So please come and join us in November as well. I think that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elly. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. So now we're going to continue with Wanyi, Executive Director of Welfare Matters, which is an organization that is focused on building capacity for farmed animal advocacy movement in Southeast Asia. She had previously co-founded Effective Altruism Singapore, which eventually led her on the path towards her work on farmed animals. Thank you and welcome, Wanyi.
Hi everyone, nice to see you here today. I see many familiar faces and a few new ones. My eyesight's not so good, so I'm not sure if I recognize other faces. Thanks for being here. As Laura said, I'm Wanyi. I'm from Welfare Matters, and I'll be sharing with you about our work on capacity building for the movement in Southeast Asia. Welfare Matters is an organization that was rebranded this year. We were originally Effective Altruism Singapore. Our mission currently is to empower the next generation of change makers in farmed animal protection in this region. And the countries that I'm talking about here are 6 countries in Southeast Asia, even though we do have 11 countries here. That would be Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. These are the countries that have the highest level of farmed animal protection, except for Singapore. Thus, they are being prioritized in our programs. So what is capacity building? I think Elly already has said that. So basically there's some overlaps. To us, yes, capacity building is about increasing the number of organizations that are working in the space. And it also refers to the number of people. We do think that volunteers and grassroots leaders are very important, but we also think that having professionals working in the space is an indicator of the size of the movement. So we do want to see more of that happening. It's also about professionalization in the movement, not just knowledge and skills, but also coordination. Community building and network strengthening is also what we think is important, because with that, we will actually be more effective. We also think that it will lead to greater public awareness of the issue, and that this issue can be more mainstreamed. At Welfare Matters, we try to create a talent pipeline in capacity building. It's actually not groundbreaking. First, it's just mostly to try to capture general interests in the public and get to meet people, attract people who are interested in farmed animals issues, and to engage them further, as well as provide training and resources to them so that we can support them to do more localized interventions, leading to some changes in farmed animals' lives in this region. Why we focus on capacity building? There are very few farmed animal organizations in Southeast Asia, and it is important that we have localized approaches. Again, I think I'm repeating what Elly is saying. And yeah, so I think we do see the same things in why this is important. In Southeast Asia, we also want to see people working in this space. This conference is an indicator of the size of the movement to a certain extent, and we can see that compared to some other regions in the world, it is still relatively small in size. So we do want to see that as we build the capacity here, we will see more people in these conferences. Farmed animal welfare advocacy needs more coordination, and that is because that will make us more effective and strategic. So Welfare Matters actually is much smaller. Elly's numbers are really huge. We actually have very small numbers. We do very few programs. That's a bit of a difference in Welfare Matters work. Currently, our main program is actually in our fellowship. So we do have events and webinars, and we have done a research, but mostly I'm going to tell you more about our fellowship program today. Our journey so far has not been very long. In 2021, we were thinking about doing a fellowship targeted at farmed animal welfare issues in Southeast Asia. Divya and I conceptualized the idea, and we managed to design and implement the program. In 2022, we had the first cohort finish the program. Some of you are here today. Some of them have gone on to work in the space. And we also organized a regional retreat in Singapore last year. In this year, we just finished our Vietnam fellowship. This is a special edition of our fellowship because the regional fellowship was in English, and we wanted to test out if we can create a fellowship in a local language, in Vietnamese, would it actually reduce language as a barrier to the movement? We don't know exactly yet when we were thinking about it, and now I think we have some indicator of whether it is. And we also started webinars this year. Not a ton, but enough to try to attract newer people who are interested in the issue to be connected to us. Next year, we will be running the fellowship again, and we will also be running a new program, the incubation program. The fellowship that we have has some model that is pretty basic, basically the same. 14 weeks, once a week for about an hour and a half. People generally have their full-time jobs. People generally have their full-time studies. These are very, very committed people. So if you see like somebody actually says they're from our fellowship, do know that they're very committed people, because it is very, very hard to stay on for 14 weeks for the program and stay through and finish it. Each cohort is about 20 to 30 people. And if we're running one that's regional with 6 countries involved, we run it in English. And the Vietnamese one just completed. We will be testing out another version in Bahasa Indonesia next year. There's a lot of words, but mainly this is to tell you what are the types of things that we look out for in getting people into the fellowship. First, they need to be interested in the cause, and be able to, we need to know that they are pretty animal-centric in the way they look at the issues. They also should be people who have the career potential, people interested to work in the space. And they need to be local. So we are very strict with this criteria. Otherwise, we actually are not making too much of a difference. We do want to seek out people who live in the country and who knows about the country to join our program. They can be at any career stage, but we do prefer people who are graduating or have graduated, and some of them are also at a mid-career. And these are the countries that we cover. So what are the results of the program? In the first round last year, out of 31 people who joined, 26 had completed. And this year, out of 25, 23 has completed. So attrition rate is pretty low. They have to actually be attending at least 9 out of the 14 sessions to consider themselves to be graduated. And voila, this is now the faces of our fellows. Not a lot of people, but highly dedicated people. So yeah, some of them are around here today, so feel free to chat with them if you're interested in the experience. If they have told you something that it can be improved, please let us know. We will also want the feedback. But we have feedback forms for that. The reasons for joining the fellowship, what we have checked in with people are 3 main reasons. People are interested in the knowledge. In our first round, we had overqualified people, meaning people who have a lot of experiences working in the space join us. We didn't want to accept them, but it seems that because in Southeast Asia, when people started out in the work, there wasn't really a structure, and people were just passionate about issue and jumped into it. And so our fellowship gave people a bit more of a structure to have an overview, understanding of the issues. Network is something that is very hard to access, so people seem to value the fellowship's value for that. And opportunities, where to work, how to work, these are things that people join a fellowship for. We only have crunched some of the stats in 2022 for the outcomes of the fellowship. Our fellowship, as you can tell, is very career-oriented, wanting people to work in this space. So out of the 31 people who joined, 84% completed, 38% have started or were already working in the space, still continuing, and 20% of our fellows are still trying to get opportunities. We also want to know what's the experience for people. So the regional fellowship had people, 76% of our fellows had rated 9 or 10 out of 10 for the overall experience, being satisfied about it. 90% said that they would recommend to others, and 67% felt that the connections were useful. We see very similar patterns in this fellowship as well, so it is a really heartening indicator for us that this is useful. It's not all rosy. Our challenges in this fellowship as well, the limitations that we have. Oftentimes, people go away with more knowledge about the issue, and we try to contextualize the issues in Southeast Asia's context as much as possible. But with regards to skills that are needed for opportunities that open up in this region, sometimes people don't necessarily have the necessary required skills or just matching skills. The timing is always a challenge because when opportunities open up, but fellows are not ready to take up the opportunity, it's something that's missed. And when people are looking for jobs and organizations are scarce, that also is a limitation. And we don't have that many projects currently, including organizations that are hiring with localized approaches that suit each country. The areas of change when we talk about careers, as you have heard, the name of the fellowship is the Southeast Asia Farm Animal Welfare Fellowship. Our goal is to try to reduce farmed animal suffering by as much as possible. So any of the interventions, whether it's to build the plant-based vegan movement, trying to address farm animal welfare in this region, or to promote alternative protein, these are all considered good outcomes for us if any of our fellows join these areas. But we do focus on farm animal welfare as an outcome more, and I'll tell you why. Welfare Matters came out of the effective altruism ecosystem, and so we do care about effective animal advocacy guided by some of these thinking. We are seeking things that are big in nature, what's neglected, and we are also looking for things that are solvable. What do I mean by big? Big as in, we didn't really think that we would necessarily work on farmed animal welfare in Southeast Asia, but globally, you can see that Southeast Asia ranks in the top 5. These are just land animals. I didn't get to pull out any of the aquatic animal stats, but I'm very confident that with aquatic animals and land animals, Southeast Asia is at the top in terms of land animal and aquatic animals being produced and farmed here in this region. So this is definitely something that's huge and relevant. In 2021, when we were looking at which organizations are actually in the space, we were very surprised that there are very, very few organizations that focus fully on farmed animal advocacy or any sort of work in this region. Less than 5 fully work in farmed animal issues, and there are some groups and organizations working in other animal issues that also touch on farmed animals. So there is a huge, huge gap. We know that it's possible to work in Southeast Asia. It's not just talking about the issue is huge, it's neglected. There are concrete things that can happen, and I'm not going to read them all out, but these are some of the actions that were already existing in Southeast Asia when we were evaluating the opportunity to work in this space. And we know that there can be career paths for people. Again, I'm not reading all these out, but we do need people who can do outreach. We need people who can do research. We need generalists, program associates to do a ton of implementation of the work. We need project managers, ops managers, so on and so forth. So this is a space that can be developed, and we are working on that. While we have been trying to do the talent pipeline type of a fellowship program, we also know that we are hitting a plateau at this stage. There are many organizations that could hire. They have been hiring and hired, but there is just not enough organizations existing in Southeast Asia. So next year, we are actually trying to explore if we can try to incubate a few new organizations. They might not start off being an organization. They might start off just as projects. I don't have too much to share with you because we're in a program development stage, but we had done a research this year into the landscape of animal farming in Southeast Asia, and something struck us as very, very saliently absent. And I'll just point out one thing that puzzles me a lot, which is ducks are actually farmed quite a lot in Southeast Asia. 90% of land animals that are farmed are chickens, broilers, and layers. But the next highest number of animals that's being farmed in this region, land animals, are actually ducks, and we hear nothing about duck welfare. So that's just one area besides others that we think could be very interesting if we can see organizations working on it. How can you get involved? This talk is about individuals, and there are so many things that people can do. It really depends on your personality, your life circumstances, your interests, your capacity. So some of the things that we can think of sharing with you in getting involved is do try to orient towards the idea of how can you do effective animal advocacy. We can do a lot of things for farmed animals, but given the very little number of amount of resources and very few people, trying to think hard about what to prioritize would really help us make more progress faster. Think about expanding and growing your own farmed animal advocacy community based on where you are, because there are many, many gaps in this region. You can participate in events, join our next fellowship, follow our newsletter, and consider starting a new project in the country they are based in. So that's what I have to share with you about Welfare Matters' work currently in this space and helping to build capacity for the movement in Southeast Asia. If you'd like to learn more, we have 2 websites you can check out. One is on our fellowship, and if you would like to look at the resources, this is a QR code you can scan. We also happen to have an exhibition table just outside this room, so you can pop by and check us out. Thank you everyone for listening. Hope that you learned something about us. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanyi. So yeah, you can submit your questions through the VOA app. I have a couple of ones I'm going to ask you to come up. Yeah, I mean, we can put 2 chairs. That's also easy. I'm just going to do it quickly. So we have a few questions. I'm going to ask this one first because we just finished both presentations, and maybe just like a couple of bullet points. But someone asked, how is Animals Alliance Asia Fellowship different from Welfare Matters?
I don't know how we're different because we don't compare notes enough, but I can tell that ours is smaller in scale. We have about 20 to 30 people in each cohort, and we do take quite long to finish one cohort. So we don't also operate in too many countries. Everybody from different countries actually join one cohort. So yeah, ours a bit of a tortoise rate fellowship.
Okay, so yeah, we've been in touch a lot enough to make sure that we're not duplicating work. And for AAA, as I said earlier, like we do fellowship in 7 different countries, and it's all in local languages and curated for each country as well. So it's not in English, and our facilitators speak the local language as well. So for whoever, like for people who don't speak English, they're welcome to join as well. And we're not only welfare focused, so we also talk about diet change, veganism, and animal rights, animal justice as well. So I guess that could be a difference.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So this one's for Elly. What's your criteria for choosing a country to focus on, and why those 7 countries?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Thank you. So we actually, when we started in 2019, we had, I don't know, like 11, 12, 13 countries. We were exploring different opportunities across Asia. It comes down to 2 things. One big thing is obviously the research that we carried out in 2022. We explored different opportunities and gaps that AAA could fill in. And we just established that, sorry, I just see familiar faces everywhere, sorry. Yeah, we just established that in some countries it makes more sense for AAA to be in as a capacity builder. In some countries, capacity building work is more needed than others. We also, we did a very thorough assessment through different countries, and thought of different factors, such as what work is already going on in that country. Are we overstepping local efforts, in which case we are not needed? In some countries, is the movement too early in a stage that maybe capacity building doesn't even make sense right now? So with all this data and information, we selected these 7.
Perfect, thanks. And just to continue with you, can you give examples of the culture-specific solutions that came up in your latest programs?
I think our coordinators will have much better answers to this. It's just so different from country to country. So as I said earlier, in Nepal, policy change is much easier, whereas in Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Vietnam, I guess it just cannot happen right now. In Pakistan, for example, we don't even have enough number of vegans or advocates to begin with to build capacity for. So we're starting with even more foundational education to actually raise awareness of animal issues and sustainability issues. For Taiwan, Japan, there's actually enough pool of people to train. There are ideas, but they need a lot of push, like in Vietnam as well. Critical thinking is not a thing in many of the Asian countries, so we need to start there and cultivate leadership from ground up, because strategy planning needs critical thinking. So we educate people on that as well. So culturally speaking, there are lots of different needs. I hope that answers.
I think so. I think it covers most of it. So for Wanyi, did you encounter challenges given that some of your fellowship's participants were already knowledgeable in an animal advocacy and some were not? And how did you deal with it?
Thanks. Yeah, that's an interesting question. No, not really. Actually, there were no problems. There were actually value in putting people together, because those who actually joined our program were very humble to have worked in this space for so long. I'm talking about people from 2-3 years to like even up to 10 years in the animal space joining. They have provided a lot of value with being able to share with others their experiences. Sometimes they talk about the campaigns that they have already been running. And so we learn from them as well. And I think that connection has gone very far. Some people after the fellowship, they also found that if one person's organization is actually hiring, they were able to very immediately share with the other fellows. So it's been a great experience. We just have been very lucky that the groups have been able to be very, very cooperative and supportive of each other, both cohorts, yeah.
That's great to hear. Quick question for Elly. Will the lectures at Asia Conference be available translated to English?
Translated to English?
Yes, to English.
Yes, we actually have an AI interpretation system in place. So anyone who speaks, I think they cover like 20 languages. Anyone speaks one of these languages can come as a speaker. We're trying to be as accessible and inclusive as possible. So yes, please come to me if you want to speak.
Perfect. So we have a couple of more questions to both of you. What background or experience is required for anyone who wants to apply for the fellowship? I think you kind of answered, but if you want to repeat a bit, just so.
No specific background. We actually, Divya and I were looking at the start to list out existing advocates in this region, what backgrounds they come from. No pattern. Only thing is that you care about farmed animals, recognize the sentient beings, and you really wanted to see change in the systems here. So that's why it was hard for us to design any skills-based fellowship program, because we cannot predict what particular skills would be needed in organizations. And we think that people can add a lot of value if you come with a lot of career capital. If you worked in business, you bring in your business-minded approach to the movement. If you've worked in the government, you know how things work over there. And there are just people who are in communications, marketing. These are all needed in the movement. So people bring along with them career capitals to join us.
I totally agree. We welcome people from different career paths, and I think that would definitely strengthen our movement, and that's really needed. Like, we always look for where's this HR person that can help us, or where's this finances person, or someone with fundraising skills or management skills. So anyone with any professional background, they will be very, very welcome as well. And we know, like from our research, that NGO space has a lot of stigma across different countries in Asia. So not many people actually have worked in the space for like 10, 20 years, where we all come from different career paths, and that's beautiful. We need that. Thank you.
Absolutely. For both of you again, difficulties you often encounter when working on the fellowship. Difficulties, any kind of challenges, roadblocks? Okay, top three.
At least being nice. When I start first, I won't have to think of new stuff, as she has said. Of course, any of our jobs is difficult, right? Though our fellowship's challenge is first we needed to start from scratch, the design. We couldn't just import something that's existing and just apply. We need to try to think of local contexts, including the types of animals that are farmed here, including the types of ways that people communicate and think here. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of Asia-based resources. Some of our feedback from the fellowship, recent ones, is that our fellows have to use Google Chrome's translate function to read articles that we share because we have very limited Vietnamese articles that we can share. That's a huge limiting factor, and we just don't have enough resources to share with people in the local languages. And we also don't have some terms in local languages. Divya and I don't speak the local languages in this region. So we do depend on other people to tell us. For example, this fellowship, our country managers, been like our full-time translator as well to help us point out what terms to use. I think a couple more points would be that there aren't many job opportunities after the fellowship, so we try to manage expectations that it's not that after you finish the program, you can get a job. People so far have been very reasonable in understanding that, so there are aspirations, there are hopes, but it's sometimes a little bit hard to get the match. Our fellowship does take very long to design. We try to consider what kinds of information to insert that can be localized. It takes 5 months to design each fellowship and 2 full-time people on it. So we haven't been able to scale it at a faster rate. So that's definitely challenging.
Yes, I definitely echo a lot of what Wanyi just shared. I think, first of all, capacity building was not a thing when we started it, like in 2019. 2020, we had our first conference and then academy in 2021. A lot of people on the ground across Asia didn't even see the need for being trained as an activist or advocate. So we had to start there. Convince people that no, you can be better, more effective to advocate for animals. So I think by now we have enough of these fellowship and academy for people to actually see, oh yeah, there's an opportunity to get better at this. So that was one of the first challenges. Second one, I think for the first 2 years we have been experimenting, exploring with different content for our academy and fellowship. In different countries, people didn't respond to some of the things we were teaching other countries. So we really have been trying to, with the help of all the coordinators here at AAA, we have been trying to tailor really well to suit the needs for each country. If we talk about social justice movements or, learning from other movements or intersectionality or history of social justice movement, some people didn't respond at all. We had to really start from scratch and talk about why we're talking about these things and why veganism is a social justice issue. So we have learned a lot in the last 2-3 years, and now we have been able to tailor it much better for each country context.
Thank you both for sharing your challenges. I think this is really important also for everyone to understand it's not always a clean path. Okay, this is, they say it's not a question, just a comment. I think it can go for both of you. Basically, they just want to say that that you both are doing an awesome work, mentioning welfare matters as well, and that it's really, really inspiring. And I think I'm going to close with this positive note. So thank you so much for your presentations. You know you have both speakers around, so please do approach them, ask them questions. And thank you very much to everyone for attending, and a big round of applause to both.
And thank you to Laura for helping to facilitate.